This story is titled Forgotten in Plain Sight. The day started with the kind of quiet most people would call peaceful, but to me it was just empty. I turned 18 today. 18. That should mean something, right? A big milestone. Maybe a cake, a few hugs, and one of those slightly cringy but still sweet "we're so proud of you" speeches parents give. But instead it was silence. The kind of silence that felt loud, as if the walls of my house were holding their breath, waiting for me to stop hoping. My name is Emily Johnson. I live in a small town in Kansas, and if you met me, you'd probably think I'm just your average teenager. And maybe I am. I have brown hair that's forever frizzy, a love for photography, and a knack for finding beauty in things most people overlook, like cracks in the sidewalk that form little patterns, or how the golden hour paints the sky in soft, warm hues. But today, even the golden hour couldn't save me. I woke up to no decorations, no card, no happy birthday, sweetheart, nothing. My mom passed away when I was 6, so it's been just me, my dad, and my sister Megan. She's 21 and practically perfect. The kind of person who lights up a room and always knows the right thing to say. I've always looked up to her, even when she made it impossible not to feel like I lived in her shadow. I tried to shake it off. Maybe they're planning a surprise, I thought. Maybe they're just waiting until dinner or something. So I went about my morning, trying not to let the growing knot in my chest tighten too much. At around 11 a.m., I heard my dad's voice from the living room. He was laughing. My heart lifted for a second, thinking maybe he was on the phone with someone about my birthday plans. But then I heard her name. Yeah, Megan's always loved that Italian place downtown. "Let's book it for 7 tonight," he said, his tone warm and excited. My stomach dropped. I stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, clutching a mug of tea that had gone cold. He wasn't talking about me. He was planning Megan's birthday dinner. Megan's birthday wasn't for another week. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I set the mug down carefully, not trusting myself not to throw it, and leaned against the counter, trying to keep the tears from spilling over. He forgot. Again, this wasn't the first time. My dad had always been absent-minded, especially when it came to me. He worked long hours as a lawyer and always seemed more in tune with Megan's life. Whether it was her soccer games in high school, her college graduation, or even her favorite ice cream flavor, he just knew. But me? I was like the forgotten corner of the house, always there but never noticed. I don't even know why I still hoped. You'd think by now I'd have learned not to expect much. But some small, stubborn part of me always believed that maybe this year would be different. That maybe this year, he'd remember. I walked upstairs to my room, my heart pounding with a mix of hurt and anger. My room was my sanctuary, a tiny space where I could be unapologetically me. Polaroid pictures lined the walls, each one a memory I'd captured. A sunset here, a stray cat there. They reminded me that even when people didn't see me, the world still held moments of beauty. But today, even the pictures felt hollow. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. No texts, no calls, nothing. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something that would make him notice me. But instead, I picked up my camera and walked out the door. The park was quiet, the kind of quiet that usually calmed me, but today it only made me feel lonelier. I sat on a bench, my camera in my lap, and watched as families played frisbee, couples walked hand in hand, and kids laughed on the swings. "Happy birthday to me," I muttered under my breath, bitterly. I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't notice the old man sitting on the bench beside me until he spoke. "Looks like you've got a lot on your mind," he said, his voice gentle but full of curiosity. I looked up, startled. He had kind eyes, the kind that made you feel like you could pour out your heart without judgment. His face was lined with wrinkles, and he held a cane with a carved handle shaped like a bird. "Just one of those days," I replied, forcing a small smile. He nodded, as if he understood more than I was saying. Funny thing about days like this, they always end, no matter how heavy they feel. I didn't respond, but his words stayed with me. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," I said. "Well, Emily, let me tell you something. Sometimes people don't see what's right in front of them. It's not because they don't care. It's because they're too caught up in their own worlds. Doesn't make it right, but it's not about you. It's about them." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You sound like you've been through this before," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He chuckled softly. "Let's just say I've lived long enough to know what it feels like to be overlooked." We sat in silence for a while, and for the first time that day, I didn't feel completely invisible. When I got home later that evening, The house was dark except for the faint glow of the kitchen light. My dad was sitting at the table, his laptop open and his phone in his hand. He didn't even look up when I walked in. I wanted to yell at him, to make him see me. But instead, I just stood there, my heart heavy with the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. And then, without thinking, I spoke. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "do you know what today is?" He looked up, confused. Thursday?" I felt my throat tighten. "It's my birthday," I whispered. His eyes widened in realization, and for a moment I thought I saw guilt flash across his face. But then he said something that shattered me completely. "Oh, Emily, I'm so sorry. I've just been so busy with work and Megan's dinner plans. I didn't mean to forget." It wasn't the first time he'd forgotten. It wasn't the first time he'd apologized, but it felt like the first time I truly understood that I wasn't a priority to him. "I get it," I said, my voice hollow. "You're busy. You always are." And with that, I turned and walked upstairs, leaving him sitting there with his guilt and his excuses. When I got to my room, I closed the door and sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, numb. For years, I'd convinced myself that if I tried hard enough, if I did enough, he'd notice me. But now I realized that no matter what I did, it wouldn't matter. But maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for him to see me and start seeing myself. That night, I pulled out a notebook and wrote down a promise to myself. I will not let someone else's inability to see my worth define me. I will celebrate myself even when no one else does. And for the first time all day, I felt a glimmer of hope. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. Not entirely free of the ache in my chest, but like I'd finally loosened the knot that had been strangling me for years. It was a new day, and I decided it was mine to take. I opened my notebook and read the promise I'd written the night before. The words felt powerful, almost like they'd carved a small path forward in the fog I'd been stuck in. I got dressed and grabbed my camera. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew staying in the house would suffocate me. My dad had already left for work, and Megan was at a friend's place. The house felt as hollow as ever, but I didn't care anymore. The streets were quiet as I wandered aimlessly, my camera hanging around my neck. I found myself back at the park, the same one where I'd met the old man the day before. To my surprise, he was there again, sitting on the same bench with his cane resting beside him. "Back so soon?" he said with a smile, as if he'd been expecting me. "Yeah, I guess this place feels safe," I admitted, sitting down beside him. He glanced at my camera. "You like capturing moments, don't you?" I nodded. "It's like freezing time. Sometimes I feel like the world moves too fast, like I'm being left behind. But when I take a picture, I can hold on to something, just for a little while." He smiled, his eyes twinkling. "That's a gift, you know, seeing the beauty in what others overlook." His words struck a chord. I'd always thought of photography as my escape, but maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was my way of leaving a mark, of proving that I existed, even if only through the lens of a camera. We talked for a while longer, about life, about feeling invisible, and about the power of small moments. He told me his name was Henry, and that he used to be a painter. "Art has a way of making people see things they've ignored," he said. As the sun began to set, I felt a strange sense of peace. I didn't know why, but talking to Henry made me feel less alone. When I got home, Megan was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I walked in and frowned. "You okay?" I hesitated. "Yeah, I guess." She set her phone down and studied me. "You don't look okay." I sighed and sat down beside her. "It's just... Dad forgot my birthday again." Her face fell. "Emily, I'm so sorry." "It's fine," I said quickly, not wanting to make her feel guilty. "I'm used to it." But Megan shook her head. "It's not fine. It's not okay that he keeps doing this to you. You deserve better." Her words caught me off guard. For so long, I'd felt like I was competing with her for his attention, like she was the reason I was invisible. But hearing her say that made me realize something. Megan wasn't the problem. "Thanks," I said softly. She smiled and reached over to hug me. "You know, we could still celebrate, just the two of us." I looked at her, surprised. "Really?" "Of course," she said. "You're my sister, and you're amazing. You deserve to feel special." For the first time that day, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. "Okay," I said. We ordered pizza, made cupcakes, and watched old movies. It wasn't a big party or a grand gesture, but it felt real. For once, I didn't feel like an afterthought. As the night went on, I realized something important. I didn't need my dad's validation to feel worthy. I didn't need him to see me for me to exist. I existed in the moments I captured with my camera, in the laughter I shared with Megan, and in the conversations with strangers like Henry. By the time I went to bed, I felt lighter. My heart still ached for the love I'd never fully received from my dad, but it no longer consumed me. The next morning, I woke up to a text from him. "Happy belated birthday, Emily. I'm sorry I forgot. Let's do something this weekend to celebrate. Love, Dad." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to make him feel the way he'd made me feel. But another part of me, the part that had made peace with his flaws, decided to let it go. I replied with a simple, "Thanks, Dad. Let me know when." Because forgiveness wasn't about him. It was about me. And that's the story of how I found myself in the cracks of being forgotten. If you've ever felt invisible, let me tell you this. You are seen. You matter. Sometimes, the people who should love us the most don't know how to show it, but that doesn't make you any less deserving of love. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a moment where you had to stop waiting for someone to notice you and start noticing yourself? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.